What's up guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Compliments of the season, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. In this tutorial I would share how I made this bustier with an underbust corset cut. I also added boning to this for more structure. If you want to learn how I did this, then give this video a thumbs up and let us jump straight into this tutorial. For this tutorial, I'm going to be starting with a pattern like I usually do, and I have marked out my lines. This line right here is the chest line, this is the underbust line, and I have the waist line. So this is the front, which I just illustrated. I would also mark the bust line because I did not mark that earlier, and my shoulder to bust is about 9.5 inches. After that is marked out, I am marking half of my bust span measurement and taking my darts. Was done with that, what I did next was the underbust tightening, and to do this I marked 1 inch away from the dart towards my right on the underbust line, and I used my hand to draw a bust curve. Then I connected from the underbust to the waistline. After that, I marked a quarter of my bust measurement on the chest line, a quarter of my waist measurement plus 1 inch dart allowance on the waistline. I joined both points together. The next thing I did was to mark my neck depth, and for that I went for 6.5 inches below. Then I marked half of my shoulder slant, which was about 2.5 inches, after which I grabbed my pattern master and connected a line that stopped on that neckline depth that I marked. It did not extend to my shoulder slant. On that line, I took half an inch for that on both sides so that my neckline would not gape. Right below that 6.5 inch that I marked 1 inch below, and I drew in a curve this way. Then I marked 3.5 inches for the length of the shoulder slant, after which I drew in a V neckline which ended on the depth of that curve. I drew in my armhole and finished off the neckline of the yoke using my pattern master. After that, I labeled my yoke, center front, and also my side front. Also, I marked 1 inch below the bust line, and this would serve as the bust dart. This would be all for now for the front. I'll still come back to work on the underbust area, but let me just work on the back pattern. For the back pattern, there is really nothing much to do. I'm just taking out 0.75 inch to eliminate any bulge at the back. Next, I'm placing a quarter of my waist measurement plus 1 inch dart and a quarter of my bust measurement. Also, I am drawing in my armhole. Then I'm going to be marking 6.5 inches below right along the armhole area and draw a slant line that would end on the chest line. After that, I would mark 3.5 inches on the shoulder slant, mark 1 inch for neck depth and draw in a round neckline. Then I would mark 3 inches on the slant line and draw the curve of the back yoke like an inverted U. I would use my marker to create dotted lines. First, I would mark 1 inch for the opening of the yoke and then use my pattern master to create a more defined curve. I would label that as my back yoke and then draw in my dart for the back. Done, I would also label my center back and side back. Before cutting on my pattern, I would mark out my zipper allowance. I like to do this on my pattern so that I have fewer things to draw on my fabric. So I have my zipper allowance here. Now I would move over to the front to cut out the underbust area. The first thing I'll do is to cut out from the waist and take out the waist dart. Then I would close the bust dart and cut out the entire pattern out, leaving out the yoke. After that, I'll try to close the dart I drew in to prevent gaping along the neckline. And while doing that, I realized that my pattern is not matching, so I'm just trimming that out. This is called dart drawing. So this will ensure that my patterns would match up. Then I will take out my pattern from the underbust area and join those two together. I will label so that I do not get confused. Then I will join them together using a sellotape. This would form an entire pattern piece, just one pattern piece. So I have the underbust to the waist region right on my hand. Then I will cut out the bust area. I'll split it into two, so I would have the center front and the side front. This would form the bust area. Also, I would be trimming out the yoke. This is the entire pattern I'm going to be working on. I've got the yoke for the front, the center front and side front for the bust area, and also the piece that goes from the underbust to the waist. I've got the center back and side back, and I've also got the yoke for the back. I will be cutting this on both the fashion fabric and also the lining. I have placed all of my patterns on my fabric and also marked out seam allowances as appropriate. Half an inch to join all the parts together and 1.5 inch for the side seam allowance. To cut the front yoke, I will be placing the edge of the neckline along the selvage because I will just want that part along the V neckline. It is now time to sew. I have cut all of my pattern pieces out. This is my center front. I have my side front. I also have the part that goes from the underbust to the waist, and I am interfacing on all of them. I've got the center back also, and I also have the side back. I also cut all this out on my lining piece too. So I ironed interfacing on both the main fabric and also the lining. This is the lining here. I'm going to be adding a breast pad to the bust area of the lining alone, and this is the other part of the lining, the part that goes from the waist and also the back. To begin the sewing process, I will be starting with the bust area of the front. I'll be matching the notches I created while I was cutting. This helps to properly sew your clothes and properly align your clothes. I'm just matching them together. This is me on my sewing machine trying to join both the center front and the side front together. Here I am joining the center back and the side back together. I repeated the same process for the lining also. I am done stitching and I have also ironed. I've ironed all of my seam lines open so that they can lay flat. This is the fashion fabric and this is my lining, and this is what it looks like. I love the fact that this lining is standing really well. And this is the back. That's my lining and this is my fashion fabric. I've also ironed all the dart lines open. The next thing would be to create the boning channels for the underbust area, the parts that goes from the underbust to the waist area. I've got some long strips of fabric that I cut out. The width of this fabric is about 1 inch, but the length is of no particular length. I just cut out as much as I thought that I would need. So what I'll do is to draw the lines that I will be creating my channels on. I have my center front right there. Away from the center front, I would mark 2.5 inches. I would also mark 2.5 inches, right? Then below the part that goes to the waist, I would mark 1.5 inch and also take 1.5 inch apart. So I'm going to be connecting those lines together. I will repeat likewise for the other side of this fabric. These lines I'm drawing would be where I would create my boning casing on, or my boning channels on. For the back also, I'm going to be putting boning. To do that, my dart line would serve as a guide. So what I would do is to mark 2.5 inches away from the darts towards the armhole area and just draw the line downward. I will also mark 1.5 inch away from the dart towards the zipper area and draw the line downward. It is on these lines that I will be sewing in my boning channels. I am done sewing all of my boning channels. Those are the back and this right here is for the front. So for the front I have a total of 5 boning channels. So guys, the next thing I will do is join the yoke to the back first of all, and I've gone ahead to turn the neckline of the yoke and the exposed part of the yoke with a matching bias tape, right? Then I would pin the yoke and sandwich it in between the lining. So what I'll do is just to sew this down, I'll use the lining to turn the fabric along the neckline and also along the sides and the zipper area. This is how my back looks like after I was done sewing. It is now time to focus on the front. For the front, I will proceed and join the underbust area to the bust area. I will repeat likewise also for the lining too. I am done sewing and this is the outcome. This is what I have. This is what my lining also looks like. It is now time to join the front yoke. To do that, first I created a notch at the center front. Then I would pin my yoke appropriately. Once I'm done pinning, I'll proceed to sew this down and also turn it with the lining, and this is the outcome. I love the way the bust area is coming out well defined. So guys, I created a pleat just to add a little bit of design to the bust area. This was not even planned initially. I just had some leftover fabric and I decided to make good use of what was left. So what I did was I created pleats and then I'm going to be pinning them down on my mannequin. This is what it looks like after I was done. What I will do next is to join both the front and the back together by the sides. So I will need to mark out my side seam allowance, then join this together. It is now time to fix my boning, and I've got my plastic boning right here. This boning is not even up to 1/4 inch. So what I will do is to use the boning to measure the length of the casing and leave about 1/2 inch for the sewing allowance along the waistline. I've got my nail file here that I will use to just roughen the edge of that boning so that it doesn't become sharp. Afterwards, I would insert it into the casing. This is how I'm going to be inserting all of my boning. So guys, I fixed a skirt and my desired sleeve, and this is the outcome of this dress. If you found this tutorial helpful, kindly give it a huge thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, please click on the subscribe button, give this video a like and a share, and see you in my next video.